So, guys, hello. Good afternoon where I am. Good morning, good evening, whenever you are. We are going to speak about the very, very, very extreme acceleration in the advancement of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. By calling it acceleration, I am clearly pointing out not really to the advancement on ground because actually it's stagnating, but the acceleration in the employment of means and opening of fronts. Since 2 days, all the first impact zones that we had until more or less end of June this year were rather casual. Two main fronts were visible. First front was the Remensky Ledge, or salient, call it whatever, however you want. And the second was the Orikiv axis, mostly concentrated around taking over Robotine. So there are two bad news. The first bad news is that Robotine has been completely evacuated by the Russians. It's not 100% under Ukrainian control. What they're doing right now is putting a wedge or a barrier between Robotine South and the two main defensive positions. And they actually managed to go through the forest belts in between the two fortified areas. I posted a picture thanks to Creamy Caprice. You can see that they literally hit the middle, and we're trying right now to enter the defensive belt on both sides, where they were greeted by the critters, by Bob. The beavers probably killed between 12 and 15 Ukrainians on those points, which is, I suppose, at least 33% of the troops employed to scout and try to take these positions. On the meantime, Gammon Badge posted a video, probably going through the east of Robotine, where we see about 15 to 20 troops trying to advance into a dugout position. I need to tell you, I don't know if that's more recent than the strikes from Bob or older. That doesn't really matter, because what matters was, again, same practice: follow up the forest belts, try to get into contact body to body to avoid Russian artillery hitting their own guys. Very smart. Wagner did the same in Bakhmut. However, Wagner paid a very high price for that. And the areas that Wagner was exploiting were extremely small. Here, Ukrainians sent between 20 and 30 guys every time, and at least half of them don't come back on their own feet. So there too, about probably 10 out of those 20 guys were severely wounded or outright killed. Then we got another video from Sudoplatov with at least 15 guys killed as well. So the KIA count is really going up. To back my own estimates up, I made a post on Twitter making my lowest calculus for Rabotine, and it was, if they lost 5 guys per day, they should be at around 360 KA minimum, and then with the typical VIA ratio, they should have been roughly at 1,300 casualties as a minimum for the village. We had this article from Shashank Joshi, which apparently talked to medics, doctors, and people from all the units involved in Rabotino, and we learned that the Scala battalion, which is about 240 people, it's not a full battalion, forget about that, they are down to 60 people. We hear that the 47th Brigade has 4-figure casualties, and as you know, because I pointed out that from Deep State, 13 different units, including 3 brigades, send people into Rabotino. So my estimate, the most conservative estimate, is 100% right, even a bit more. I think I underestimated the losses. But the main point of all this is the following. Rabotino is not Russian occupied anymore, Russian controlled anymore. Whatever the Ukrainians are doing with it, that they have troops inside or not, that doesn't matter. We need to close that chapter for the moment, of course. The counters for about 5-6 days that happened were extremely precise, extremely interesting, and honestly a very good idea. And like what Def Mongol from the other side says, it was absolutely not political. Why it wasn't political? Because Ukrainians had already pulled their flag on the school the 23rd. They have the video. They show the guys trying to get inside the, no, actually being inside and getting shelled inside the village. So on that aspect, the political purpose of it is not very important. The Ukrainians made their PR move, and it's okay. What was more interesting is that they gave the Ukrainians a run for their money, and it's still not over in Robotyne, by the way. The troops still get hit in Robotyne. It's not that the point, but they get a run for their money, caused extreme damage, and it's exactly what they should have done in Kherson before the Vasilivka axis. So basically, the axis towards Berislav was pushed until Duchani. If they had done this last year, the conquest of Kherson would have been a lot more bloody. It was already bloody for the Ukrainians, they admitted as much, but it would have been a lot more bloody, and maybe they would have paused this whole process and tried to pursue a push towards Kharkov and Lugansk instead of pushing toward Kherson, which of course would have not changed the equation because the Russians were in shrinking territory beyond the Dnieper. So on that aspect, it just would have caused a lot more damage on both sides, which is what I wanted last year, which is a fighting retreat. This didn't happen. It's okay, because finally all that extra cost that they didn't extol on the troops last year, they're extolling it now. But this is actually pointing out the situational awareness of the Ukrainian leadership. Why? Now we go to the second bad news. The second bad news is that they are doing something exactly like Wagner. They are bypassing very high fortifications by foot mobiles. And they are doing this because the Russians are not defending every single centimeter of land until troops get to a choke point. And that's where exactly I got in the area of Verbove. They are right on this choke point between Dragon Teeth, Ditch, and defensive positions. And Gammon Badge, once again, huge props to you, my man, for the footage. Showed them in the anti-tank ditch, couple of troops, 5 to 10 guys getting hate dropped and killed. Once again, this is very smart from them, but I made already a thread about it. It's extremely wasteful, and it depends how much meat they can throw on to this. The advance, contrary to what is said, is not that deep. They are not conquering cities like this. What they are doing is mostly preparing the ground, trying to defuse areas, and then uh, trying to get the tanks going through and the heavy vehicles. We saw that this is not working. 2 T-64s BV were destroyed between the void created through Robotyne and Verbove, and just into the approach of Novoprokopivka. On top of that, another BMP 1 or 2 was destroyed, still from the footage. This, in my opinion, shows very simple things. Ukrainians are doing what I said they were going to do: establish a simile control through infantry, opening enough space so that the tanks can go through. This, of course, is countered by ATGMs, FPVs, artillery, drones, and so on. They do the same as well to push the Russians out. There is a very awful footage, but it's very interesting. You need to see it, guys, because it shows a artillery, mortar, and drone attack on retreating Russians. It's actually an evacuation, and that evacuation is about 8 to 9 people. The most dangerous threat to the whole evacuation is one mortar round and an FPV. They are getting hit by cluster ammunition, and the cluster only wounds or kills one person. And it's literally, he gets hit almost pinpoint with one of the submunitions. All the rest go around and the guys are still able to walk. And this is one of the things I was saying. The clusters are not game changers. What the clusters allow is covering into guys into the open, and then literally hurrying, pressing them, and wounding them, but not forcibly changing the ratio of kills per se, unless you're unlucky and in the middle of a killing field. But it's the same thing for a airburst ammunition or a simple artillery ammunition. Now, the real bad news about this is not that much that there are small advances, is that uh, the Ukrainians, for some reason, have decided to relaunch a complete counteroffensive next to the Vremensky Ledge between Novodonetsk and Novomayorsk. This, once again, Gammon, thank you very much, my man. You are a gem. Posted footage of at least one tank trying to attack positions around Novodonetsk. These guys are going to end up at least the first and second day the same way they ended up last time. But this time, apparently, they have managed to have enough corridors, demined corridors, to put tanks in close range. Last time it also happened. That's how they lost IMXs, by the way. And not only that. But this time, it seems to be different, that they have worked their way at least close enough to be able to use tanks for support. This, of course, is not going to change much. Into my opinion, it's going to be a real blunder, because now they're reopening another front that was calm and fresh for the Russians for at least 2.5 months. Of course, we don't know that. They may have very well attacked by artillery the position and softened it up, etc., etc. But it doesn't seem so. It doesn't seem so. Why? Because what the Ukrainians are trying to do right now is trying to shallow the front a maximum in order to allow them to bring artillery closer. Because apparently, what's happening in both in Vermensky Ledge, so around Urozhanye, Zabavitne, and also into Robotyne itself, is that Russian artillery still works, FPVs still work, and even infantry is still there. This elastic defense is causing huge problems to the Ukrainians, because the main asset of this defense remain ATGMs and FPVs. So vehicles have it extremely complicated to move through and try to provide close support to the troops. Helicopters, we will not speak about it on Ukrainian side, of course. Russian side is going to be something else. We haven't seen helicopters around that area, Robotyne, for 3 days now. They haven't been shot down at all, but simply they are not going further, most probably because the Ukrainians have infiltrated so far, so deep right now, that the lines are completely intermingled, and they don't want to actually get to the same situation that they had last time, when a team with an RBS 70 was able to come close enough to shoot one K-52 and even film both launching point and impact point, so the perfect ambush. And this, unfortunately, shows once again that the Russians should have had strike drones at this point. Even if you lose them, it's not a big deal, like Ukrainians are sending TB2s again in the Kinburg speed, which is not very far, but still, they are still risking them for PR points, whatever you want that. But in this case, the Russians should use this, maybe that the forepost, the module, whatever, just in order to push them far enough, and not let everything to be done by FPVs, drop drones, and artillery. Because artillery needs to be spared as much as possible, not for the ammunition, but for the positions of fire. Because right now the troops are so close, so that in sometimes they can act also as forward artillery controllers. However, this push between Novodonetsk and Novomayorsk, to me, is a very big mistake, because actually it's trying to threaten the flank of Ugledar and Pavlovka. But it also means that they're gonna get hit across the board. So they're gonna get hit from Volnovaka, be that with HIMARS, sorry guys, be that with Hurricane, Smerch, artillery. It doesn't matter. At this point, they cannot sustain this counter battery coming in slant, and this, in my opinion, is going to cost them very, very precious resources for the whole front. I understand why they're doing it, because it gives them the possibility. I actually posted a picture. You can see that where Staramilinka is, you can draw a line and it comes more or less around Novodonetsk and beyond it. But the situation with that problem, in order to push that front, you need troops spread on all that line. Until now, they had never done this. They had done straightforward charges in different points, but they had never done that. So, the main point that we have here, the main situation that we have here, is that they are going all in. It's the first time I'm seeing this. And it doesn't mean that they're on their last legs, but there is something there that they see that I don't see. I'm going to be honest with you. On that front, on that part of the front, I don't see any real damage, and I don't really understand. I can understand that they're going to go on a slant from Novodonetsk and go down to Zabavitne and try to deep digger and then turn and take the highway towards Mariupol. But the problem with that, once again, is that they don't have the supply lines that deep, and then also cannot be supported that deep by artillery. High march, maybe that's not a big problem. I agree with that, but normal artillery cannot go and support them 20-30 kilometers away, because they're gonna basically reach the line of contact right now, which is honestly, you can see for both sides artillery is a death threat. Within 10 kilometers from line of contact, you're gonna get found and gonna get hit. Anyway, so right now what I'm seeing is that they are trying, in my opinion, a very nice diversion, opening up the front to pull people away from Rabotina Verbove, because that's where the whole deal is. If they go through there and they try to trickle down, and it's Novoprokopivka and then Solotka Balta, this is perfect. It's exactly what they should have done from day 2 to 15 in order to reach Tokmak. The problem is that there is not enough damage done to the Russians there that would allow the Ukrainians to move that fast, and nobody's gonna hit them. As you can see, more and more and more and more, they don't stop Russian scout drones from watching them. They cannot stop FPVs, and also most of the time we can geolocate their advances by them getting killed. It was exactly the same situation with Wagner Zex 3 to 5 months ago. I know that people say, yeah, but still Wagner advanced. And I agree with that. It's not a problem. But we also saw that within the month of May, Wagner literally had to pull back because there was nothing else to throw at. On top of the problems with Prigozhin and whatever bullshit he was speaking about, boypripasi and all this shit. But it was taxing to the unit, and we are already at three months. We're gonna enter the second week actually of the fourth month by a Friday, and this means, I'm sorry guys, but the Ukrainians need to be extremely positive, especially in what they let transpire on losses. And these losses, I told you, you cannot believe what they write. It's normal. There is always a bit of psyop in Western press, but you can believe what you see. And within about 3 days, FPV attacks alone have killed between 60 and 80 guys. Just those. We're not speaking artillery, we're not speaking tanks, we're not speaking infantry. Just FPVs alone are catching Ukrainians in the open. And the same thing is happening on the other side as well. Although we see a lot less of that. And I honestly advise you guys to still go and see Ukrainian channels, because you're going to see it's not even a parity. Right now, it is one Russian drone attack for half of them in the Ukrainian side. There was a thread made by Dan Spune, fuck this guy, which showed the same attack that I told you, guys getting hit by cluster by evacuating, in 5 different tweets, in 5 different postures, with one FPV, then a drone, another drone, and etc. etc. So actually, there is a huge problem, and it's logical, because Ukrainians need to move. Ukrainians need to be on the open. And this is how I said in the thread I told you, the infantry artillery type of fight is going to be a problem for Ukraine soon enough, because the deeper they go towards Novoprokopivka, the more exposed they're going to be on the side from Kopani, and they haven't attacked Kopani at all. And this is the main issue that I have right now. There is no heavy vehicles going that deep. There are no heavy vehicles within 1 or 2 kilometers of Novoprokopivka. They're still at 4 kilometers away, and they're getting hit by ATGMs from 3, 4 kilometers away as well. And once again, the high ground behind Robotine, that supposedly, according to Siak, was taken, actually it's not true, because the real high ground is still in front of them, is getting used by the Russians in a very, very nice way. Once again, losses are there. I already posted the proven KIA for the Russians, and we are about 5,200 something. And this is not a small number. But on the other side, we are at least at 7,000. And the most important part, as I said, I already posted on multiple threads, when you actually start calculating, if Ukrainians are still going with a NATO or NATO-like structure for a company, which is maximum 10 commanding officers, usually should be 7, but maximum 10, they have lost 338 officers that were line officers, not pilots, not whatever. So these officers, if we just keep a linear calculus, it's not always true, but still, these officers, even if they are about 10 per company, it means that 34 companies have no more commanding officers. They are decapitated. It's just fucking NCOs and soldiers. Of course, you're gonna say, but NCO can no. But this shows that the losses are so high. They are so high, and if you add the wounded in action, I told you, you get between 32 and 35% of lined up companies, according to the Americans, the 40,000 guys, which are about 360 companies. Suddenly, you see that you're going to lose about 110 to 120 companies' leadership wounded or killed. It's a third of the whole force, which is spread over the whole front, unfortunately. That's what the Americans are saying. That's why you're also seeing, because we're seeing equipment that's not supposed to be up north, that's up north. Equipment is not supposed to be in Bahmut, is in Bahmut. So all these steps lead us to believe, or at least lead me to believe, that Ukrainians are getting it in the chin, that about 1/3 to 40% of the force is the casualty. Can be a prickle, can be an amputee, can be a kill, can be a POW, whatever. But we're speaking about at least 33% to 35% based on the unit decapitation. And this, once again, you don't need to be a genius. I'm not a fucking genius. You just need to check how the orbit of a company, NATO-wise, I'm basing that on the French-style company, which is between 5 and 8 people, commanding officers per company, and up to 140 persons. So this whole situation, to me, is extremely unexpected. I wasn't expecting to be that right. Once again, it can be a psyop, can be whatever you want, but I wasn't expected to be that right. I put my statistics on a minima because I said, okay, maybe let's not overdo it, because everybody's like 40,000 KIA, 100, all this bullshit. No, guys, no. I calculated that based on what we know with certainty, and then we have things that they straight up say to the press, yeah, we lost like 180 guys on a small battalion who does only drones and bullshit. And on the other side, we got the 47th, who the medics apparently have said we have 4-digit casualties. So 4-digit casualties, even if it's 1,000, given the orbit of the brigade, I told you, I am even willing to consider these guys are 2,000 in that brigade, but not more, because there is no vehicle capacity for that. So the guys have lost half of the fucking brigade in casualties. Like, what the fuck, man? The brigade is straight up combat ineffective. And this is something I'm like, if you are having this problem, why don't you go on the same salient that you know how it works, that you have made progress? Why are you going to put the 33rd and 37th and the 31st Again on Novodonetsk, after the first 3 days, they lost. There were battalions there. There was one video where the battalion said we're 450, we're 120 motherfuckers. We lost 300 and something guys right off the bat because they were attacked on the staging points. They were attacked on the attempts they made to use MiClicks to clear the minefields. And then after that, when they got out of their fucking vehicles, they started to get bombarded and shit. And then we saw the wonderful defense in Novodarivka from the Alosha tank crew, who basically, that guy zapped that day at least 30 to 40 guys. I mean, like, it was like a video game. So once again, I hope that I'm wrong. I'm saying, guy, you're pro Z. What the fuck? You hope you're wrong. I hope that I'm wrong because it would mean that these people have no brain. I know I call them brain dead nation, but I don't think they're brain dead. There is no way they would do that. So I hope there is something we don't see, and it's gonna become more interesting by the time to come because this kind of pledged troops in the area means literally that they see something we don't see. Then let's wait 2 to 3 days to see what the results are going to be between Novodonetsk and Novomayorsk. If they are the way I think they're going to be, so a lot of losses and almost no gaining ground, then I'm sorry, but it means that the Ukrainians are tapping out. For the foreseeable 2 to 3 weeks, they are tapping out. They are going to just start at an attrition game on the front line, and they're going to go back with Abrams shit, whatever. Now, speaking of Abrams, I posted. I don't think I was the first. It was a mutual on Twitter that actually found it first. I already did the CSS. He knows himself. But what's going on is that we have the first Challenger 2 lost. On the same caravan, there is a BMP-2. There are 2 Cossacks, and there is a T-64 Ober 2022. I know. People ask me, how do you know? I already posted the references. I posted the specific APU, so the auxiliary power unit that they put right above the gas evacuation on the engine deck, which powers the GPS IV style of self-communicating device that they installed, that were trying to install before the war started. And also absence of course, infrared light, and the small stairwell they put on the pontoons to help out with infantry transport and also access to the tank itself. What does I say? Tell to us. I said they probably mixed at least one territorial defense unit or National Guard unit with the 82nd. And both tanks were supposed to be interoperable. I said that they need to have a GPS, BMS tool to be able to co-communicate. And they probably were attacked trying to advance towards the axis that we know now the Ukrainians were using on foot. By the way, the 2 tanks I told you guys that were hit and that the Ukrainians were supposedly beyond the Surovikin line, it dates from the 9th of August, and apparently it's way in front of the Surovikin line. Those 2 tanks tried to block the axis of advance from the Ukrainian side, and they got hit most probably with artillery. And one was just damaged, it was T-72B3, and the other was a T-72B, completely torched. But that shows that the Ukrainians never went with enough troops towards the Surovikin fortifications. I hate this name. It's just a defensive line. The guy is nice, and honestly, his latest photo was a bomb. Actually, I loved it. But the thing is the following. A lot of psyop has popped out, and a lot of things that we know right now comes from them dying. Once again, this is exactly the same thing that we knew about Wagner in Bakhmut. So it's not that much of a good news, but at least the positive one is that they're getting smashed. And given the losses, they are to a point where they absolutely need a result as soon as possible. And of course, I'm going to agree with you guys. Things have changed. These guys are moving forward. They're creeping, they're losing people, they're gonna start to lose and lose and lose and lose and lose and lose until at some point they cannot just put more meat on the table. And this is my scare, that the fact that they reacted so fast with the new wave of mobilization and widening the net they can use to grab people, this shows that they are going to go this way for Zaporizhye. They are going to put meat on the skewer as much as it takes, and therefore the Russians now have to go back to their fundamentals. And this is why all the footage that Gaman has posted right now is extremely fundamental, because it shows that the Russians are going to start using what they were supposed to use in case of breach until Tokmak. They're going to use it way forward now. And I hope they're not going to make the mistake to overdo it. It needs to be a attrition creep until that the moment that Ukrainians cannot push more forward with the forces they have, and their artillery cannot help them move forward. And that point, I think, is reaching its climax, given that now they try to have another axe on the right of the Russian flank, so basically in Donetsk, in South Donetsk. However, the most important part right now is what are the next steps. The next steps for me is try and get them as close as possible to Solotka Balta within the end of October, if it's possible, unless the line cracks. And it's possible. I mean, like, once again, it's not a done deal that the Ukraine are gonna fucking die in mass around Novoprokopivka. Never go beyond that. Quite the contrary. If they put the meat on the plate, they're gonna move forward at extreme losses, of course, but it doesn't matter. The guys who are dealing with this war on Ukrainian side, they don't give a fuck how many Ukrainians die. They don't. I'm not gonna say that's different on the Russian side, but they don't give a fuck. Zelensky, the only point he wants right now is put a dot on the E as soon as possible, because he still thinks that the Russians are gonna get scared and start negotiating if Ukrainians are deep enough. The problem is that the advance of the Ukrainian army right now is so small and so narrow that actually now the whole point is going with the attrition name and putting the same way they did between March and May and even July. The only thing they think they got in abundance, which is meat. And I'm sorry for a lot of guys, but this is going to crater the Ukrainian army for next year. They want short-term gains because they want a political solution within next year. And this is fucking madness. Because it's playing exactly in the hand of the Russians. You're gonna lose 30k to get to, let's say, between Tokmak and Melitopol, and you say, okay, we got them within a HIMARS range, but you need to open the whole wide front, and for this, the Ukrainians do not have the capacity right now. That's why all the fucking advances are so narrow. And this is my scare. I don't understand. I would like to understand why the fuck are they doing this? Why are they sacrificing a huge chunk of a ready army? I don't get it. I get the whole courage and ideological bullshit, but it's not smart. And until now, the Ukrainians have shown some smarts and some guts. And a lot of PR, of course. So what the fuck is going on? I mean, like, honestly, right now I'm dumbfounded. Because everything that I'm reading, everything I'm seeing, literally coincides with my predictions. Low threshold, high threshold, doesn't matter. But they're still gang pressing people to get shot and killed and droned away. The same is true for Russia as well, by the way. I'm not gonna say like, oh no. But with the confirmed deaths, we're seeing that the trend is going down. There's a huge differential between June and August. It's plus 400, actually minus 400 people dead. And the few days in September that we have confirmation, we are at the lowest point ever. I don't understand. Of course, maybe the bad news is not coming in, etc., etc. But right now, in 4 days, we should be around 40 per day. We're at 18 per day. Once again, that's probably going to get equalized through the month once the obituaries are going to come in and the announcements and so on. But right now, it's extremely weird. It's fucking weird. I don't understand. Honestly. So, I hope Ukrainians know what they're doing, because we want this shit show to last a bit longer. It's lasting right now. But yeah, basically that's it. Guys, that was it. I'm gonna do also a like 15 to 20 minutes Q&A. You can ask whatever you want. And for the rest, it was really a short term because it was more of a rant. I don't understand what's going on. I didn't thought that Ukrainians were going to be this stupid and do this. But unless there's something I don't see, honestly, it's very possible. I don't see everything. Quite the contrary. I think they're throwing the offensive right now. They're doing it in order to freeze the line where it is right now, recover, reorganize, await more equipment, more support from the US, and then push back again. In the winter, it's going to be extremely complicated, but they are going to relinquish initiative to the Russians, I think, or try to do so by feinting that a defensive and a retreating posture. This emo is just it's meant to lead the Russians into a position where they're gonna do stupid things, repeat shit like Ugledar or more recently in Andrivka. So yeah, guys, I see the request. I'm gonna get you on. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, Ghost of Marx first, because you were the first to ask for the word. So yeah, go on, man. Yeah, up to you, man. Snake, I added you. You're gonna be third after Tuni. So yeah, guys. Oh, Ghost of Mars went. So Tuni, come on, man.
I have like just a few questions. So I did read um like 2 months ago an article by a Voinkor. He wasn't Morse, yes, but he was someone who was fighting on the Donetsk front, and he was saying that like basically in Donetsk, like even if the population is pro-Russian, it's like almost impossible to bring DRGs like past the line of contact because like basically like as a soldier you're basically unknown among the locals. Like so like a little girl will always like see you, like some children will see you and like tell that there's someone that they don't recognize among that's like not a local armed person. So like do you think that's true, or Russia just doesn't want to like put DRGs past like the LOC of like basically frozen area, like contact areas like I don't know, Krasnogorovka, Sumy, Chernigov?
What do you mean? Ukrainian DRGs on the Donetsk front, or how?
Russian or Donetsk or DPR DRGs, like operating, let's say, in
That go beyond? No, that's not true, because that's the funny thing. There are a couple of things you need to know. There are private channels distributing inside town footage of Kupiansk right now, and there is a
like
small.
it's actually
You're
like
gonna.
not civilians but DRGs.
No. That's the thing. There are pro-Russian civilians literally doing drive-bys with phones, and this is something that apparently is a huge scandal in Ukraine, and people want absolutely to know who is doing this, because it's been 18, 19 months, and these guys, they don't understand there are still pro-Russians within Ukrainian lines. And that happened, the same thing. I don't know if you checked, there was a video of cannon fire in the background in Kupiansk, and like old pensioners said Nashi. Like, what the fuck, bro? And then they understood that we're filmed by a Ukrainian guy. Said Nashi, I mean, the ZSU. So The thing right now is that the Russians do not need DRGs behind the lines because it's a line of contact. So drones, artillery, and etc. is doing their job. Ukrainians having less means are going to use a lot more human intelligence, and that's what we see in their attacks towards Russia as well. They need that. It's the cheapest, but also the more risky way to do it, because most of the time a suicide mission. We have already seen at least 7 to 8 groups within 3 to 4 months literally massacred. Plus we have the Russian DRGs passing the border in Sumy, in Chernigov, and also in Kharkov Oblast, whacking whatever. Sometimes this big fish, sometimes something small. I already posted the picture of guys from I think Kraken getting whacked by the Skiff
Yeah,
DRG.
that's great, but I mean, like I'm gonna disagree that like the ones that like what Ukraine is doing is risky because like no one was like the guys who like blew up Ka-52s in Pskov were never caught, and they decided like that like security must be like really shit there, and I guess they were right because like no FPV operators were caught. Maybe they crossed Estonia border, maybe not, but I mean
The
that's like
Ka-52 network led to 3 Russians being arrested and being in a colony for 15 years, bro.
like sorry, I didn't read that.
The Ukrainians who did that, the 2 guys were back in fucking Lithuania, but the 3 Russians who helped them are in fucking penal colony right now. After this war is gonna end up, you're gonna see that one of the biggest problems for Russia right now is people, and hilariously enough, liberals who are supposedly not violent, who are literally helping out kill other Russians and destroy Russia, which is literally what Putin has said they would do. And of course, you can say, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, yeah, but you always have the choice to do non-violent resistance if you're a fucking liberal in Russia. You're not doing that. What you're doing is
True.
you are facilitating.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
see with
I
the killing
understand.
the killing of Tatarsky. We can see with the guys who got caught in Pskov the first time. But the biggest problem in Pskov, once again, is that that city is very, very well.
Yeah, yeah, the Triso Baltics.
Yes, it's completely there, so it can get attacked even beyond the borders. However, that's not the biggest problem of Pskov.
Yeah,
The biggest problem.
I'm just curious because like you said it's Russian that helped them in DRGs, but it's never like in your opinion is like are such like FPV like drone strikes done by Ukrainian military or just purely like anti like self-hating Russians?
It depends. The case is the guy who attacked the A50 in Belarus was a Belarusian liberal. He got the small charge apparently from the local mob, according to Belarusian services. But in reality, I'm pretty sure he got it mailed from somewhere, and in between a tube GRU mastermind was behind it. But that's not the. I mean, the problem is not catching the hand. The problem is dismantling the network. That's why every attack by a DRG within the territory of Russia results in a network getting popped. And this is why I say, okay, the results are rather spectacular in this case, because we're speaking about 2 EL-76, 1 222 M3, and probably at least a couple of other damages. But then the people who help these guys,
Yeah, they're fucked.
they're fucked. But the problem is that you have a network. So you catch the guy who hosted this asshole for a couple of days, to lay low. You open his phone, and everything that you see on that phone that has remotely anything anti-Russian or anti-special military operation, anti-war, goes to fucking gulag. And this opens up a hole in the whole anti-Russian sentiment within Russia. It of course creates a lot of animosity, because suddenly like, yeah, okay, it's because of the war they're doing this. Some guy's gonna say the war made them do this. Other would say, yeah, of course, but they're gonna take my side and say like, you can always protest. Nobody's gonna shoot you on the street for that. Why are you helping the enemy? Because that's the step further. You are not only being against the war, you are
I
literally
mean, yeah,
becoming a
yes,
participant.
dude. Like, literally, I'm just like, they need to, like, it's just funny how, like, not even like Navalny is like super anti-war now. I mean, like, they should really like hammer in the whole like shark thing. Like, they should, like, the instead of like Inusmi, they should like the Russian like media should just like show Shiba posts on, take screenshots of Shiba posts on Twitter and just
But no,
translate
no,
them.
no, no, no. That's the thing. That's the thing. They don't even need that because unfortunately Ukrainians still communicate with Russians on TG, on VK. The level of hate Ukrainians are showing and the level of gore they are showing for a whole year, the automatic answer of the Ukrainians towards Russians were showing 100, 200 Russian dead. We went there. I was on Twitter like everybody else. My changing character for my account was literally because of that. Because I said, okay, you know you're gonna show gore, but at some point it's gonna boil up to the point when you're gonna cry about it. And we have it right now. We Gammon found a post about one of the Azov guys in Kremenaya, who literally said like, we are a small country losing so fucking many people. Stop trying to portray this as a huge victorious fight. We're getting fucking shredded. And even if we were so-called winning, at what cost? It was literally a meme. It was a fucking meme. And this is the thing that Ukrainians last year didn't get. And I told you guys last year, when at the start, the more brutal the Ukrainians are gonna show themselves because they got a fucking monkey chip on their fucking shoulder, the more they're gonna get grounded at the end of the game. Because it became, from end of March, it became a fucking marathon. And Ukrainians can humanely not outlast the Russians, especially doing the shit they did for about a year. They start in earnest with March already started to drop votes on wounded guys. The first videos of that were from March 2022, and it just got worse all over the fucking time. And this is what I'm telling you, hate towards Ukrainians, it's now very mild. But if you think that anyone needs to unleash some dragon of hate, of, negatively showing the Ukrainians as a people, not the Azovites, the Nazis, the bullshit that Kremlin shows. If they go full THD, full TWK, my man, it's a game over, even with fucking shovels. Even if Russians go at the front with shovels, it's gonna be a fucking shit show. And that's the fucking point. I don't want to, because at that point, if it goes that far, if the mobilization is enacted, if 1.5 million are under the fucking flag and half of them goes to the front, they're going to be a fucking NATO intervention, even half-assed. And we are entering uncharted territory. And this is the biggest issue we have right now, is that Ukrainians are going towards a democide by their own fucking device. Kiev Independent posts that Ukrainians to rebuild a fucking country would need 4.5 million immigrants within 10 years. Motherfucker, how the fuck are you gonna do that? Well, your own population, your fertility rate, I mean, you would have a boom within Ukraine that is not justified for anyone in Europe. You are not rebuilding Germany, you're not rebuilding Europe, you're rebuilding literally the poorest country in fucking Europe with a real market of 30 million people, because the actual reason, the raison d'etre of Ukraine was to be a fucking latch into the Russian market and the CI market. So now you gotta stop. And Arestovich said that perfectly. All the area around Kharkov, which was a transition hub towards Russia, which was prosperous, which was historically rich, is gone. Now it becomes a stop. It becomes a dead end. It becomes a butt stop. And this is the biggest issue. I also made a thread about that. But that Russians still haven't understood. Putin is still under the fucking illusion that things are going to be the same after he does whatever he is that he wants to do. And there, of course, maybe there's something to be done with people who would be a lot more violent, who would do a lot more damage within Ukraine and solve, quote unquote, this situation. But so far, it's not going to happen. It's not, because right now it's perfect. Putin can sustain his war economy, soft war economy. The prices of the main, okay, it's not the main export as it said, but one of the main exports of the Russian Federations are going back up. Winter, it's at our fucking gates. It's the perfect fucking tornado for this war, for this year. The Russians are in a way better strategic space and place than where they were last year. And the only thing that I need to do right now, is keep the Ukraine under the impression they can advance whenever they want, with the same kind of casualties. So yeah, Snake, your turn,
I
man.
just have another question,
Go
one
on.
last question. What do you think the prospects are regarding Kupiansk? Like, is it kind of a dead end, or it's kind of just on pause to like stop the Verbovka area?
No.
Because
Kupiansk was always going to be a creep offensive. I said it. It is not a real offensive in the sense that they don't want to get it, because right now what's going to happen is that Ukrainians are going to pull back from there, blow the bridge, and you are on the Oskol again. So, what would you have you gained? Just worse positions that the Ukrainians can hit you from the back? No, I perfectly understand why the Russians are threatening Kupiansk but not attacking it properly. And also, by forcing the troops to guard the area, by FPVing the shit out of them and bringing, I made the calculus, it's at least 7 to 9 battalions that were called through, units of those battalions. And I counted at least 12 companies. 12 companies, you're looking at 1,200 to 1,500 guys. And that's a lot of troops that you need to divert given the real ratio of forces. And they're not diverting like Teroboron guys, because the Terabobs that were getting smashed, they're getting tip of the spear type of units over there, including Azov. So to me, it was a very smart move all over July that forced the Ukrainians to suddenly think they were going to lose a lot of room over there. In reality, the Russians pushed as much as they could unopposed. The moment they had a little bit of contact, they went all crazy on 1 or 2 points. When they saw that the Ukrainians were going to reinforce them, they just pulled back to not the initial lines, but to lines that could defend more easily. And then by letting the Ukrainians move up again in the open, they hit them back. And I told you, the FPVs are doing carnage over there. And also in the Kupiansk area, they're losing a lot more artillery than in Zaporozhye. There is a reason for that. Because the Kupiansk area is in the worst strategic position when compared to Zaporozhye, because up north it has the Russian border, so it's very easy for the Russians to just fucking drop UMPKs and be done with it and never be touched. It's the reverse situation with the HIMARS. So to me, the Kupiansk area itself is not primordial right now. They are just using it as a the same way that as the Ukrainians used Bakhmut for a while and are still using Bakhmut right now. So, Snake, your turn, man.
Hey, yeah, I mean, regarding the the current tactics, I mean, really, it has a lot to do with sort of the delivery schedule of new equipment. I mean, basically, if you look at the way that they're delivering Abrams, they're actually not even getting 30 this month. It's going to be stretched out over many months. They're getting they're getting a first installment 10 by the end of this month. And it's just like they just will not receive enough to really constitute like even one battalion optimistically before the end of the year. And I think there are another like 10 or so Leo 2s from Sweden. The STRV 122s are coming sometime in the next couple months. I think they might have started deliveries. In general, like all this, like 40 heavy tanks, like that gives you one battalion to work with.
Yep.
I mean, it's like it's really nothing, and then the rest they have absolute trash, Leo 1s, which are being delivered at rate maybe like 10 a month. So they're at the current rate of deliveries, they'll have some new offensive force by it's next spring. But the problem with that, of course, they're gonna have to fight. They're gonna have to take attrition. But by using this like meat heavy tactics, they're trying to preserve what remains of their reserve motor pool as much as they can.
Exactly.
Right. So they're gearing up for next year, but the thing that they don't have eyes on, and the West still doesn't have eyes on, is like there's just the state of Russian drone production. I mean, I was talking to my friend, our mutual guy on the server, like he more or less said that by next spring, like the Garand with a camera, when is DLA 54 or whatever it's going to be called, it could be online based on the semiconductor orders. He was talking to somebody in the supply chain that. Essentially, like drone production is going in 2024 is going to scale up by a lot, and you're already seeing it scale up. FPVs right now, but you're going to see big heavy hitters come in, next year, and the nature of the war will change. I mean, it's kind of like it's a long stretch out, like Nagorno-Karabakh, where for the first week it looked kind of evenly matched, and then the dam broke, because of the.
Second week it was just pouring. And I was and that we knew we learned. Sorry, just a small digression. We knew afterwards that actually it happened because most of the AD assets were neutralized within 3 days, and that the Azeris showed all those hits on the span of 2 to 3 weeks, which led everybody to believe that this was not possible. But actually, within 3 days, they had done most of the damage, and so they could have free reign. And in this case, you're exactly right. That's one of the things I was thinking. Also, in the use of the walking infantry tactics, the Azeris did just that because vehicles. The terrain was not proper for that, but also vehicles were noisy. They could have been seen. That was one of the problem with Armenian later stages counterattacks. They just started to concentrate means, and those got hit because they had no ID. Sorry to interrupt you. Go on, man. Sorry.
That's fine. I mean, once you get something like low strike asset, like a Garand with a camera equivalent, basically you can have long loiter missions over railways, over waterways. I mean, you basically completely shut down essentially logistical transport. I mean, then this is going to be a problem once you have essentially your logistics capability being cut in half because of these basically this hunt and destroy missions of Garand drones on locomotives, on resupply convoys. All these things are just it's going to be. I mean, what Ukraine is going to head into is going to be like a version of what happened to the Iraqi army in the 80s, where there's a gigantic army that just has a lot of meat, but logistically they could only really support a couple, like the two Republican Guard divisions, because like that's all the logistical capability they had, and the army was expanding.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Too fast for their officer corps to even absorb and train. So it's just a large number of ineffective infantry, and then you have a couple fire brigades that are just being moved around. I mean, this is essentially what's going to happen to Ukraine next year.
Yeah. My biggest scare, once again, as you said, is that indeed, if the DLA 54 comes online and it's properly done, then the whole F-16 saga is done. Why? Because the whole point of the F-16, as you said yourself, was more of giving a multispectral danger or threat with a ground attack vision. But if Russians each and every night or day, or doesn't matter, send 30 grants in a specific area as a swarm or quasi swarm or whatever, and they start smashing every kind of infrastructure, transport, staging point, because they have eyes. It's not they don't need to first see and then send something completely blind, but on a geolocated threat. If they can fuse both detection and strike without having to use a UCAV, we are into, and we said that to each other. It's a whole new world of pain, and then we enter what I say, that in this war so far it has always been action counter action, and if Russia for some reason is going to have a trump card, even for a very short period of time, especially if those grants are going to start hitting ammunition transport, especially artillery transport, then I don't know how the Americans are going to react. To me, honestly, I don't see any other choice for them than to threaten intervention. I don't see it otherwise. I would like to be wrong on that, but I don't see it otherwise. What are you going to do to the Russians if they start flying grants within 50 kilometers from the front, for starters? But let's say something else. We discussed this. You send those motherfuckers from up north and up south. Suddenly, Ukrainians try to have this very funny strike missions with a couple of HIMARS. But it's very funny that you can know where the grants are coming from, these data is coming from. But the HIMARS itself needs to fucking hide. So if for some reason it gets stuck between two overlapping flying zones of these loitering ammunition, and they get spotted with the charges that we see on the grounds between 20 and 40 kilos, there is no way that HIMARS is going anywhere. So to me, it's not copium. I think if they are used in that way, it's going to get a huge PR victory for the Russians. But as I don't think they're going to be like that. They're going to be used primarily to interdict fundamental logistics, as you said. You just pre-program the railway tracks, and the moment they see a train, they blow it up. Are there civilians in that train? Maybe, maybe not. Unfortunately, so is war. And in this case, we have seen that dual use infrastructure is fair game from the Ukrainians as well. They said it right away. They hit the Crimean bridge and so on. Russians have done the same, by the way. So it's not at all like trying to play the victim card. Just saying that because both sides agree to this dual use of infrastructure, well, if civilians are killed in the process, just like it happened on the Russian side as well, it's too bad, but that's how it's gonna go. So yeah, thanks, Nick. Ed, it's your turn. Then it's gonna be ZSU, our friend, and then I'm adding Oleg and OKB. Sorry guys, I saw your request, but yeah, I was talking too much.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hello everybody. I just read the Twitter about the FAB 1500.
Yep.
So that's good news if they started using it, and that would come like into play. Maybe, for example, going to Avdiivka,
yep,
where they are entrenched and all in bunkers, and they are trying many times now, the Russians, to conquer it. But I mean, it will be a plus on the VVS, but on the other side, they are behind. As I said many times, if they could arm maybe the Tupolev 22s or even the 95 too, like the Americans did with the JDAMs and the B1 and the B52, that would give them like the upper hand on the targets they hit probably, and the rest. And then just recalling what you said before about the Geran, or the Russian Harop, if we call it.
Yep.
I don't think they would go necessarily, I mean, on this, but the plane and the airport thing. For example, they would have come useful, for example, for the Staro Konstantinovka hangars there.
was there. Nestor Konstantinovka was in the
Yeah.
same. Actually,
Yeah.
all the first death line, the 350 kilometers from front, that would be my first thought, because right now with the grounds they can spot them, and the grounds are fucking blind. They
Yeah.
know where to hit, but they don't see on real time. So on that you are absolutely right.
And regarding now, it's coming the wet season, so I think you are right in the fact that they are trying to stabilize what they got till now, the Ukrainians, I mean, and then maybe prepare for spring. In the meantime, maybe they have some chance, and the F-16s are ready, to try to help them on spring. But we must see what the Russians do this winter. Maybe they go for the bridges, rail or road, but not all of them, but just enough to get some choke points and then hit them
Exactly.
there, because they know that they have to pass through there, basically. But let's see, regarding the network then that you said inside Russia. Russia is having the same problems as the US had with the Russian illegals and the rest. I mean, it's probably an open society now. You cannot say it's the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to tackle it down like completely. So that is going to be, they just can try to control it as much as they can, but I don't think they can resolve it completely.
No, for sure.
They cannot.
It would take them a infrastructural change like in China.
Yeah, with cameras and social credit system and everybody that the Chinese have.
And it's clearly the fact that Putin doesn't want that, and this makes it so much harder for me, because we come from the country we come, and for them back then there was no internet, no cameras, but they could literally know exactly what you did 50 years.
It was human, and but if you think about what happened the first years, when the guys went up north, I mean, it was 10 years of war, and basically, if you consider, they were DRGs prepared by and launched by CIA. Whenever it was in Bari, I think there was a base where they got launched and everything, but it was the same, and it took 10 years. I think even in Western Ukraine, it took some time to the KGB to
completely clear it out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that was the time frame, and now I think Putin, like you said, is trying to have the impact of the war, like not so much on the everyday life of the people. Otherwise, it becomes so unpopular and cannot be justified.
Exactly. On that we agree, and I think because of our origins and our logic behind how you need to control the population, I have always spoken about triage camps for refugees, because that would already reduce a lot of the danger. But apparently it's not refugees at all. It's the guys who get there most of the time have fake Russian passports or Russian passports, because it's the fucking same nation. I'm sorry, Ukrainians can say whatever they want for as long as people remember, it has been the same guys. Anyway, I want to tell you something where I agree 100% with you. The fact that they're going back to the FAB 1500 is showing the absolute dismal failure of the UPAP 1500, although it's a completely different ordinance. It serves a different purpose, but they should have used that a lot more right now. And honestly, the moment they had the UMPKs on the FAB 500, they literally switched to that every time they needed it. They used the UPABs about 12 times, that is proven, with rather large damage. But in reality, as you said, if you already got a weapon that is also better because it's designed for that task, why would you go and wrap up some bullshit, some ghetto application on an old style bomb? Because apparently, and you're going to see in the upcoming days, there is a cone, a gliding cone that has been applied, and the gliding kit now is a full kit. So you got wings that open under the bomb, and the hoist points are conserved a bit like they do it right now, but the hoist points apparently are naked.
Blended?
No, are
No?
naked. That's the thing. Are completely naked, and there is a cable that goes again under, like in the initial Orthodox jam. Let's call it like that.
Hmm.
And I think that's what was the biggest problem, because now you got a bigger bomb, so the release sometimes can also snap the cable. You know what I mean? It's a way harder, and then you got a false release and not an arming of the bomb, and the bomb would just like drop like a pig, and instead of hitting 60 kilometers, would literally plunge down 5 kilometers from target. So I think those kind of small details were still needed to be ironed. As for the rest, you're absolutely right. The biggest issue for the Russians right now is to see what they really want from this war. If they want to win it the way they are trying to win it, it's going to be a nightmare for them to actually win the peace. Because if it goes on for another year and we see another 60, 70, 80, 90,000 Ukrainians dead and as much wounded or incapacitated, it's going to be at least 100 years hatred. It will not change. And I don't think the Russians, if they win this war, are going ever back to what it was before, because this whole thing is for superiority between these pecking order between these two, let's say it, different nations / ethnicities that I abhor. It honestly, to me, it really looks like Tusk and Geg all over again. But apparently, it's not the case. And despite the fact they eat the same shit, they speak the same language more or less, they still pretend to be different. Anyway,
I don't know. I just think like the VVS should go a lot more like on thermobarics and air launchable napalm in
yeah,
those trenches, like you said, because the Tusk cannot do much with that range, and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah, I know.
Time for others. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
So yes, this it's your turn, and then we're gonna have Oleg and OKB.
I think that said, like now that uh, let others do.
Okay. OKB, it's your turn, man. Or Oleg, one of the two, you two guys.
I'll let OKB go ahead.
Hello.
Yep.
I wanted to ask a question. There was a Ukrainian account, I think UA SmartCat, that was talking about Russian force generation. How much? What kind of units are the Russians able to generate, and are they able to keep up with replacing losses and as in wounded and dead? Or are we seeing things like amalgamating units to keep up with loss? Or are they able to bring enough drop-in replacements? And how do they solve the issue of? How do you think they will try to solve the issue of rotation? Because it's quite obvious they don't have enough troops to rotate all the units. They don't have a replacement army right now.
What I'm seeing is two things. First of all, for the first 2 months, there was this claim about Russians not being able to rotate, bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Popov got also ejected for that. First week of August, there was speaking of rotation straight up and reorganization of some units who had coped a lot of damage, especially around Rabotino and especially on the Vremensky salient. One of the biggest issues right now, I want to make a space about it because I want to pour my heart out on Khodorkovsky. That asshole is covering an extreme incompetence of the leadership of the LDNR when it came to organizing a defense that had to be shored up again by the Russian military. It seems that the biggest minus right now, the guys who get the most shot upon, are literally the separs, let's call them like this, the new republics. For some reason, I understand, because they are at war for 10 years, 9 years and a half now. But for a lot of things, what I don't understand is for a while we're speaking about how these guys were tough and prepared to war and had experience on, and actually that proved to be a hollow army. And then they had to be resupplied again, retrained again. A lot of things weren't on terms, and a lot of smaller outfits took the combat, while the larger outfits were getting creamed at some point. But the main fourth generation right now, what I'm seeing is what remains. I'm seeing that Wagner is getting poached. And I think about 10,000 guys are going to get spread all over Zaporozhye and Donetsk as a cadre force. Another thing is volunteers, despite all the bullshit, are not getting that much traction anymore. Most of it due to the fact that how the Wagner adventure ended. And therefore, the Russians are committing, they're not going towards mobilization yet, although there were signs in June, but they are committing troops that they had reserved for, I think, a counteraction at the end of this counteroffensive. And that's the biggest problem I'm seeing, is that the Russians want this counter to finish, even if they have to pledge some troops that were supposed to counterattack. They want it to finish because they see the damage that both sides are taking. And they think that after this, if the Ukrainians are stuck, that's what they think, or that's what I think they think, the Ukrainians are going to try and have some terms. Maybe not for real, maybe just to freeze a little bit the front and try to conserve what they have. But Ukrainians are going to need it pretty soon, within 2 to 3 months. And that is, I think, why the Hail Mary that we're seeing right now in southern Donetsk is so puzzling to me, because this leads the Russians to believe, okay, these guys are going for one last rush, and then we need to do something with it. And I think that's where the Russians are more self-damaging so far, is when they get the initiative back, first thing they do is do stupid shit they did before with maybe better or maybe worse results. And this was typical with Kupiansk, and what happened in the northern creeping offensive is that I don't know who the guys are in charge there, but they were pretty smart. The moment they started to have a bit more resistance, they stopped the advance. And that's perfect, because then you don't want to waste resource on that shit. Now, the last thing I wanted to tell, and this makes it a bit more complicated for me to explain, but I'm going to try and explain it a bit differently later, is that the real fourth generation of Russian forces right now is going to depend on how much troops they can equip right off the bat. And so far, I can see between 200,000 and 300,000 troops, which is not enough. It's enough to sustain and push the Ukrainians back to some point, but it's not enough to create what we want from them, which is open another front, distract and push out the Ukrainians, and inflict enough damage so that whatever they try to mobilize on the Ukrainian side is not going to be enough. One of the best, I'd say, time frames for the Russians to do anything would have to be end of October. Because end of October we will see, as Eddie said, we will see where they are in terms of equipment. Snake said as well they're trying to conserve as much as they can because they burned that equipment pretty fast. And also, it's going to be more difficult for the Russians to move through the wet season and also to the cold season. So on that aspect, Ukrainians are literally now trying to go to the extra time, let's say it like that, in terms of football. So that's my opinion.
Because essentially, the way I see the Russian counteraction was trying to move to the Oskol River and the frontier of Kharkov and Lugansk region, and the main axe was the push from Svatova, and they had a supporting axis which was towards Liman, and you see the troops. I think there were 2 regiments of 76 Airborne Division, and these regiments are basically being moved from Lugansk to Zaporozhye region. And that's, just as a side note, I think they maybe expected 1 or 2 regiments to be still in reserve at this time because of the Zapad drills. They always use the 76th Division for Kaliningrad defense, and they had them canceled at the last minute. But essentially, it looks a lot, like last year. They want to keep Kherson, so they move a bunch of troops that were kept near Izium. They stopped their offensive actions there. In July, August was completely unsuccessful, and they moved into Kherson for defense. And essentially, right now you see the same thing. Troops being moved around to kind of plug gaps instead of bringing because they don't have that many fresh reserves available. And I see people talk about they show these numbers by Medvedev, or they're completely bullshit. But it does look like Russians have essentially some skeleton units built out, but they're just not filled. Like the 25th Army, the 39th Army Corps. So these are essentially units that need to be filled with another mobilization that's not coming because of both supply constraints and political reasons, I guess. Putin, his election, paranoid about losing political power.
But on that aspect, I'm gonna already dispel the myth. There is nothing. If he needs to cheat, he's gonna cheat. If he needs to go Hail Mary on his own election, it's not a problem. I mean, for him right now, it's still a formality, especially because the Russians understand they're at war. So the election situation is not that much of a problem. The real problem is that asking for mobilization right now, for the numbers that we heard and for the orders that were passed for equipment, will probably require to strip the labor market and also part of the unemployed from Russia. There are about 1.1 unemployed males able to be drafted in the military. And also, it would also require, because you know how it works when you're drafted, it's not everybody that you see on the fucking list is drafted, because you need also to have a reserve.
Yeah, the medical commission.
That's one part, but you also have you have a jump on the list and everything. So out of whatever is available, they will need to put about 500,000 out of the labor market. They would also to take about 500,000 from the unemployed. Those million, if you mix them well, you're going to have between 10 and 20% of people that are unfit for whatever reason. Some reasons are going to be like there is nobody else to provide for a family. Like a 28-year-old guy who's not married or whatever. First thing's going to happen is not sending the guy because the family has only him and he needs to procreate and so on and so on. These were also some of the huge problems that happened in September last year when they started grabbing whatever, and then they saw themselves with legal problems that are literally on the book. As for why these troops are being rotated, they are being rotated, in my opinion, to the fact that, as I told you, they are the sharpest tools in the box. Not that much because there is nothing else, but the problem is that you're going to have the same reaction that you had in Bakhmut in the flanks at the very early, latest days of May, early June, when the mobilized that were put in there just didn't put any effort to resist because they had room behind them, and also because the real problem was Zaporozhye. And the Russians, once again, saw what was happening, and they just shored up the defense over there. And we are trying to get past Klishivka now for 2 months. And it has never seemed so unlikely that Bakhmut is going to get encircled and gain back from the Ukrainians with a level of losses on both sides. But now, as I said, Kupiansk per se was just, honestly, I'm going to say a meme, a feint. Because what are you going to do with 2 regiments once you attain Kupiansk? Getting bombed to smithereens like before? No, Actually, that's at least one smart thing that they did, especially with the fact that unlike Kherson, now they have a lot more room to maneuver in Zaporozhye. And as for the rest, I honestly, I am still expecting a late second period goal, let's call it like this, with the mobilization. Because if indeed, as I said, Ukrainians are on the last legs, there is no way the Russian military is going to let this pass. Because it would be the best opportunity not to end the war, because Ukrainians are hell-bent to die to the last, or to send up to the last valid Ukrainian to die, but would put the Ukrainians such a worse situation strategically compared to the beginning of the year, which would then either put the Americans, because there is also election year in America, start pushing towards negotiation, even if they're fake and wacky like the Minsk protocols. But that's the thing I'm having. I'm not seeing the same linearity and the same references as with Kherson and Kharkov last year, because there was a real depletion of forces. Because the Russians were going out of a large-scale offensive in 2.5 fronts, and they were just burning through gear and ammunition. So it's not at all. I every time I point to the differences in losses, it's huge. It's huge. If the Russians had the same level of losses they have this year, last year, we would speak about the siege of Dnipropetrovsk. Because Ukrainians would have the same losses they have this year, last year. Honestly, it would have been a done deal for a lot of cities. Nikolaev probably, Voznесens probably, and Zaporozhye probably. And maybe Kryvyi Rog, but I don't think so for Kryvyi Rog, because it would have needed a double envelopment move, which the Russians had no troops for anyway. Next guy is going to be Oleg. Sorry, demographic. Normally it was going to be you and Gammon, but Oleg reconnected. So Oleg, it's your turn, man.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I had a question about Ukrainian officer losses, right?
Yes.
So you had the trend recently of it being very high, like you mentioned, and you mentioned that the Ukrainians were going to conduct like a general mobilization, right? And so with Russian hits on the rear, and with the fact that like I understand that proficiency in Russian isn't like absent from Western militaries, right? Like I have a friend who's going in for a lot, like in the U.S. because he knows it. But with Ukrainian officer losses specifically, like I understand with meat, you can just mobilize it forever. But how are they going to replace officers who are lost, like fighting?
I told you they aren't. What they're doing is they're promoting ranks and getting guys straight up from officer school. I had 3 case analysis in previous times. One was, I told you, last year in May, the guy had 7 months out of officer school, was 20-something, 20 years old and 8 months. And he got killed on his first commission. Like, that was his first mission and his first commission, his first fucking platoon. Guy got smashed. He got ambushed by VDV guys in Kherson, and it was done. And the same happened in Kharkov this year in February, and the same happened in Robotine. Guy was like 24 years old, brand new from officer school. They do this stupid attack in March, what I was supposed to show the weak points of the Russian defense line. They got creamed. They lost like 30-something guys. One guy was a colonel that was just back from the UK. He got smacked. That's how bad the situation is. They are literally throwing people and see who's gonna survive. And right now there was in May, I think, a decree of speedy promotion for NCOs that would have experience and so on. So that's what I'm doing right now. They're promoting NCOs. But the problem with promoting NCOs, it means that you are grinding your own unit, because an NCO is supposed to be a line, a terrain commander, and then your captain is going to be with you, but usually he's going to have to manage the day-to-day planning and digest it so that the NCO can have their mission tasks, these task-oriented moves, which would then form this whole shape, which would be the whole mission and the whole movement. But by doing that, as I said, you're just grinding on your NCO core and you're just promoting. They get killed, you promote. And so there is an attrition, internal silent attrition effect on units. And this also means that sometimes an NCO does an okay-ish job because the unit loses all of its CO staff, suddenly needs to manage not only like a fire team, but needs to go with a platoon or needs to go with the whole company when the company is still full, And then we had this discussion that the biggest problem is you have these newly promoted COs, and you got completely freshmen who have never been there. So the chemistry sometimes doesn't take. The formation is also worse and worse, not because they don't get proper formation, just because they don't have time, on top of whatever could be bad or good. Now, the other problem that I have with the CO losses is that nobody's paying attention to it, and this makes me mad. It makes me mad because strategically there's where you see your main losses, there where you see the weaknesses. Normally it shouldn't be that much. You could lose a lot of foot mobiles, no problem, but then you have a structure of control, command and control, and that's what the Ukrainians are losing by droves, man. I mean, like, we are at 122 per month, all combined for the whole front. And that, as I said to you, affects the killed alone, affect like 12 to 13% of the assembled companies for this counter. And that's huge because it means there's no leadership at all. If you start doing 50-50, it's like half your leadership is gone. Then you go to 25, 26%. In 3 months, for such a huge force, it's crazy. And we're speaking only about the killed in action. We're not speaking about the wounded and so on. So this situation, and given what we're reading on the press, is to me is fucking, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So I don't know how long they're gonna do it like this. And also one thing that they did pretty well in the beginning is that all the medical staff were pushed back. Instead of being surgeons and stuff, they were pushed back in as fighting force, and foreigners came through to actually provide medicine on the field. And back in the day, I posted like a whole class of medics, combat medics that were absolutely not Ukrainian, that were going with the Terp. And you could see that because the guy going behind him had no fucking idea what he was doing. He was not a medical officer at all. He was just the Terp for them. Anyway. So Gammon and then demographic. Gam, are you there, man? Okay, bro, disconnected. Demographic, it's your turn, man.
Yeah, so one thing I've wondered a little bit about, not worried much, but the SFC, they're kind of fucking around with like speedboats, the fucking missile attacks on the S-300 battery. I'm kind of worried, like Belgrade border incursion styles, that they just keep fucking around, keep taking attention. Do you think there's anything to be done about that? Can they strike Odessa even harder? It's just a weird front to be open.
First of all, it's not the Azov Sea, because the Azov Sea is currently a Russian lake. Well, the biggest issue is actually the passage through the Dnieper estuary and the Odessa shoreline. There you're right, and that's the part on Kherson, which is the Kinburg Spit, and they hit that shit very hard because it's very close. Ochakov is 10 to 12 kilometers from the Kinburg Spit, and if the drone goes deep and then narrow, they can hit rather deep in the back. But the distance from the Dnieper shoreline is 60 kilometers. So whatever position the HIMARS is going to take, is going to hit until the deep end. So Skadovsk can be hit, Zalizny port, and so on. We had that. The biggest issue, though, is, as you say, now they've restarted this campaign on the Black Sea, mostly because it's cheap for them to do so. They're not going to occupy Crimea. They're gonna do that touch and go. They tried Takankur, they got hit, and also the Russians are not doing a literal navy counteroffensive at all. Mostly because whatever damage is there is not enough. You know, it's still a distraction. Where it gets a bit more complicated is in the Kherson area, because there of course there is not much room for, you know, a huge action from Ukrainian side, because there is still this body of water, sorry. But there it's a fixating strategy from Ukrainian side. They are forcing the Russians to stay on Kherson and not be able to get more troops towards the front Zaporozhye. And then there's the problem of the drying of the Novakakova reservoir, which is not completely dry, but it's still a problem. Now, latest that I want to say is that it works on both sides. Ukrainians are also losing assets and using assets that they should not be doing, you know, they should not be using, because in the best case scenario, what they're going to do is having another PR victory, or PR disaster, as we saw with at least 3 boats capsized. But yeah, you are right. It's annoying. It's extremely annoying, and yeah, if you're not looking at the big picture, that thing is an absolute nightmare. PR nightmare for sure. So, Gammon, it's your turn, man.
Okay, hello. So I just wanted to ask that, you know, the Ukrainians opening the front at Novodonetsk, and the problem that I feel that when you know, fighter bomber said that, you know, that like we use less than 100 UMPKs, like when a front is active like Rabotino, they are going to use them there. It's that simple. They are going to use them at Orakovo. But, you know, if another front activated, at least they take the pressure from other fronts. Because as I see, like, for example, in Kherson, the VKS, like, literally gaming what they will do in the future against the DRGs, because it's free damage. Like, you know, they can do nothing about it. And they apply this really good. I think they apply really good in Rabotino, because, you know, we are not going to see like troops getting vaporized by UMPKs. You know, not going to see airflows about a FAB 500 hit or a FAB 250 hits, because the nearest tube is literally like 500 meters away. So that's the problem, I think, with FPV hits. So like we see these are big damages, like, you know, 30 guy dead. Well, not more like 40, but like a UMPK hit, everyone is gone. Like, you know, and the same with vehicles. Like, we do not see, like, you know, that's intriguing. Like when they say these military aviation channels in the Russian side, they have to use KH-29 TDs and KH-45s and 40s, but, you know, there's absolutely no footage of them. But we know they are being used in Rabotino, and they are like doing probably horrific damage. I mean, these are 100-kilogram ordnances. So, and my question is that, what is the future from here for the Russian aviation? I think the main problem will be for Ukrainians are not for the 1.5 ton bombs come in, but when the 100-kilogram Orthodox SDB comes in, because they are in the making. Because, you know, then they can use the Su-34, 45 characteristics to full extent. And that's going to be like, okay, how are good? I mean, at that point, I think U.S. intervention is necessary because I don't see how they're going to counter it. That's all.
Yeah, but I agree with you. What we're expecting right now, and you're 100% right, is the small diameter bomb ski that was hinted by none other than Andrei Beatty. The biggest issue that I have with that project is that, as you said, that would mean that only one plane should deal with it, and it should be the Su-24-34, one type of plane, I want to say. And then for the bigger charges, I'm going to what said, have a bigger hauler, like bring a 222 M3, load it with UMPKs on the bay, and just drop them, like let 10, 15 launch, and then you don't have the problem that you have right now when you need to drop only 2 each and every time by solo pilots. What is the problem, I agree with you, is that at some point the VKS should have assets that would allow it to do things that for the moment it cannot do. And this is, as you said, it's going to be a quality step up. And for that, I mean, there is no other way. If you want a shortcut, they will have to talk with the Iranians, they will have to talk with the Chinese. Because apparently the Russians themselves cannot get that type of ordnance right away, or don't want to. I don't know. So at some point they will need to buy. They did it for the Gerans, they did it for other issues, so they will need to buy.
I mean, it's already a quality. Like I think they're already like 2 classes up from the ladder. Like, but at the third class, like it's going to be hard for the Ukrainians. Like, you know, when the problem with these planes, like the 34 and the 35, that they can stay there forever, pretty much forever. And with these like mosquito loadouts, like these 100-kilo bombs allow them, they can just like, you know, like a mothership, just like when an artillery fires, you know, and we see that the drone coverage is almost there. You know,
that's why we need more audits.
Yeah, it's almost there, and you know, at that point, they're just going to get smashed. I don't see any other way. Like they can have whatever artillery, like at least tube artillery, but I just don't see the point.
I understand. I agree with you. We have one last guy, and then I'm going to be... so, Demographic Realist, it's your turn, man. I know you waited for a long time. I really appreciate that. So, up to you, guys. Demo?
Sorry, I already had the other question, and apart from that, I think some other questions I've had were already answered. I had something about Stelia 54, but Snake already talked about that. So I'm done for today, but thank you there.
Okay, well, that's it for it, guys. Thank you very much.
I just have one last question.
Go on.
Yeah, so do you think it's true that the coalition SV is being produced? Because apparently, like, I read on Parallel that basically, like, the whole rationale, like the main failure with producing it, other than like corruption, as basically like Russia had like its electronics were too shitty to make like long range guided munitions that like could handle the G's from like an L-52 gun, and they still like need to get the electronics that like can handle the G's.
This is a very big, I'd say, problem, because Andrei itself said that Ukrainians had evidence that they got hit by artillery, GPS artillery rounds. So, cui bono? Why Andrei would lie about that? Why Andrei would lie?
So you think like the coalition is being like used, and like it's starting to be produced, but it's very like low key, like secret.
No. I think something else. I think that the ammunition for the coalition is already there. The Krasnopol D is already there. The barrels are not there. The problem with the coalition and these guns is not the electronics. is not the electronics, because it makes no sense given that you have already Krasnopol M2. No, the problem is the barrel. Motovelica was in shit state, and now they're fucking playing ball with the governor of the oblast by handing him a fucking hammer with Motovelica on that, because now he paid money so they can reinvest and have frigated barrels again. So the whole thing with the Koalicja is not that much the electronics, it's literally the barrels. Because the model and the design and the geometry of the barreling was completely fucked up. They literally were copying the Panzer Haubitze 2000. And this was the biggest scandal, and this is why everybody was joking about the fact that they bought everything in Germany to make a German army. And that's why the Armata was fucked up, because they couldn't. But the reality is not that. They tried to copy that design, it failed, and then they had to go back to the drawing scale with a completely different muzzle and a completely different angle of.
I mean, it's kind of like, why can't they just like lengthen the guillotine to a Sta barrel? Because I mean, like, as far as I know, the Krab's like barrel is just like a like the Cesar's barrel is just basically like a lengthened Alf 1 barrel, where it's like
that's the thing. Why don't they do that? Because there are other things you need to also notice. You need to have a integrity of your barrel and harmonics that are completely different. Russians have longer barrels. The Pion, the Malkas, and so on are longer barrels, but also they are also thicker and heavier, so the harmonics are completely different. It's not Russia. It's not that Russia do not know how to make barrels. It's that the Ministry of Defense need to shut the fuck up and let people do with things that they can do right away. What the Ministry of Defense was doing for a lot of time, especially because of Sergikov. Oh, I saw this fucking German project. Look at this fucking barrel thickness. It's amazing. How do they do that? If you cannot do it, man, just don't. Do what you need and what you know to do. And this is the problem that plagued Russia for so long. They wanted so hard to copy one-to-one a lot of foreign projects, and that shit failed. Because
maybe they should have stuck with Iset and longer range munitions for Malka.
Yeah, that too, but that's not the problem here. The main problem here is that if you cannot make a barrel that is within 3 tons, make a one that is 5 tons, but they can fire your ammunition longer. It doesn't matter.
I mean that's weird, because I mean that's not generally the practice of the Russian Air Force. Like, they just do iterative developments, mostly Russian, like, I mean, apart from in the Russian army, apart from the Armata and Kurganets and Boomerang, everything is just very how do I say it, incremental. So I mean, it's
sure, but that's your problem. Until at that point, until 2009, it was incremental. After 2009, because of the Georgian War, everybody got like, "Oh my God, we got a shitty army. We need to reinvent the wheel every time," and that's what happened. They fucking had the panic attack, and that's it. And everything. They had the UMPKs ready in 2005. We have to see a ghetto project in 2022.
Yeah, let's just hope there's more such artillery, more Lancets. I mean, they seem to be on the right track. They just need to keep attrition low, because I mean, even with good industrial capacity, you can't, if you're losing 30 MSTAs a day, you can only produce 30 MSTAs a month.
Losing 30 MSTAs a day.
No, I meant a month. I meant a month.
Sometimes you really go on this fucking hyperbole that is really rubbing me the wrong way.
I meant the month. I meant the month.
Let me finish. The problem is this: the losses in the Zaporozhye front are rather low regarding the whole front losses, and also a lot of shit that Oryx has been posting the last 3 months have been undocumented losses. That for half of them, I'm like, no. Those losses were seen at some point. You didn't add them because you didn't know which side it was. And I had this fucking discussion with Jakub, and Jakub knows this. And our friend Flying Dutch Fella is doing a nice job pointing them out. No, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the fact that Oryx, for a long while now, it has completely, of course, he has never been apolitical. He has always had a side. But right now, they're just doing withholding information. Apparently, I learned today that the fucking Challenger 2 footage is 4 days old. 4 days old.
I mean, L posting takes time, I guess. Like
No. That's the thing. There is a fucking, because that's the thing. There was one guy on on Lost Armor making jokes about you're not gonna believe what happened today. It was the 31st of August, and we were like, what? There's an old tank that got blown up, and we're like, okay, it's a Leopard 2, big deal, you know. But apparently he was talking about a Challenger. He just didn't know what tank had been blown up because the footage or the sources from the Ukrainian side were not specific what was blown up. Now, 4 days later, we have a video of which, that's the funny part, the weather doesn't match with the weather yesterday or before yesterday. If you see the weather predictions, it was covered. It wasn't sunny. And this is also a lot of things I'm seeing on both sides. They're posting bullshit, and it completely fucks the dynamics of the action. And it's okay, it's logical, it's infosec. But everybody just starts and jumps on this and say, yeah, there's this and that. No, it's not that easy. So that's why I'm saying, in your case, you jump on every piece of information, like 30 MSTs. So far, only 17 have been lost in Zaporozhye. Most of the losses were shitty guns and MLRS, which is a huge problem because there are at least 3 or 4 Uraguns. So once again,
like the entire front.
I mean, we need to have a cool head and make a proper analysis. It doesn't mean that the problems are not there, but every time I'm hearing you sometimes, it's like, oh, we lost this and we lost that. It's fucking war. The other side is not stupid, and the other side is not alone. So either we are let me finish. Either we are true to ourselves and we are ethical and say, okay, fuck ups happen on both sides. Either we are literally dooming every single time. I'm sorry, I'm not like this in my life. I've never been like that. And trust me, at some points I was on the fucking street. I had nothing. And this is one of the things that I'm seeing with a lot of pro-Russian posters, and it makes me fucking angry. Like, guys, we are speaking with a fucking huge landmass who is engaged on the fight for survival. If you cannot see a couple of guys dying because of a mistake, then that's not a war. You're not cut for war. And I'm saying because myself it hurts. Sometimes I couldn't open the fucking Telegram last year because everything was fucked up. And my only, I'd say, advice for everyone, grow a pair of balls, understand that everybody's gonna lose in this. It's not a fucking Marvel cartoon or whatever, and that's what it is. And of course, you need more of everything, but there are constraints. There are political constraints, economical constraints, and also just productivity constraints. There are things that you need to prove.
Productivity is the biggest, like, production units per month or per year. That's the thing.
But that's not the problem, because for 6 months, and Snake every time says that pretty much the way it stood. For 6 months, the Russians were just fucking sucking dicks. They were just hashing plans to what they want. I announced before everyone that they had bought fucking suicide drones in Iran, and and below, 3 months later, first Garand flies in September, and everybody was, oh my god, how did you knew? It's not that how did I knew, it made sense. And sometimes you need to also just like see things how they're gonna happen. Same thing with the fucking doomers about the Su-35s for Iran. It takes time, guys. It's not because you think they bought the fucking planes, they're gonna be tomorrow there. Of course, these were already ready because it was the Egyptian contract. But they need to form guys, they need to have a trainer. I mean, it takes fucking time. People need to be patient. It's a war. It's not a fucking video game. And this thing, unfortunately, was ingrained in people are following this to Twitter due to the overexposure from the Turkish side, both in Syria and in fucking Azerbaijan. Everybody thinks it's going to be like 10 days, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, and it's done. It doesn't work like that. You got 35 million, it got 145 million. And it's not about a speck of land like Nagorno-Karabakh. It's the fucking second biggest country in Europe, if we exclude Russia. And every time I see, they are not doing cap over fucking... No, why should they? The other side has extremely efficient anti-aircraft weapons. Why should you lose 10 aircraft a fucking week just to do some stupid sad on the other side of Ukraine that you don't have the troops to go there? It's like, sometimes I'm speaking to walls and I'm like, why would you do that? The same thing with shelters. They need to build shelters in at least 17 different fucking bases and at the forefront, so within 300 kilometers. It will not change anything unless there are hardened shelters. It would take 3 to 6 months to have that. And if for some reason, God forbid, the Ukrainians have a thermobaric fucking drone going through the main gate, then fuck your shelter. It's gonna blow everything inside. The problem with this shit is that it's a fixed position. That's the whole point of the plane. It should not be fixed and you should see things coming. There's the fucking Russian fuck up. It's in control, in transfer, and in everything. But building something fixed, it's not gonna change much given that it can throw shit at you every single night. And I understand that people are pissed and they want shelter and this, but it's not gonna change. They're just gonna wait, especially if it's a DRG with a time constraint, like it happened in Pskov. They're gonna be there the moment you move your fucking plane out. They're gonna shoot you down. So the solution is just not one thing. It's a whole mindset that for the moment Russians are learning again, and people don't want to understand this. Even fucking military observers like, yeah, we should have fucking built this. Bro, and then what? You're gonna move your plane out and your DRG is gonna be...
I mean, not even the Americans have shelters for their, like, strategic bombers. They just put them in a fuck all desert and, like 300
that's the point. So
kilometers.
that's also the point. A lot of
Like
people
maybe like put Chukotka, like American version of Chukotka, like Alaska or somewhere like that.
Yeah, but
Area
you need them
51
at the front. You need it at the front, man. That's the thing. You need them around the clock to start lobbing shit to Ukraine. That's the main problem. The fact
And
that
I think that takes time, right? Like if you launch it from Chukotka or Olenia in the north.
Yeah, of course. You're gonna fly for 3 to 4 hours, which is gonna be just lighting like a fucking Christmas tree on whatever the Americans have to monitor them. Anyway, sorry for the rant, guys. I'm not gonna follow up on this because I have the end of my day that's coming. I need to go and get my children. Have a nice day and to the next time. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.